of psychology, and this branch is relatively new branch of psychology, and it deals with human cognition. Now, what does it mean? Human cognition. What is the meaning of the human cognition? Human cognition means the higher mental process of human being. Now, in psychology, higher mental process is counted as uh, perception, tension, language development, intelligence, memory, thought, thinking, etc. So everything is under the branch of cognitive psychology. And this cognitive psychology first started in 1958. In 1956, when the first concept of cognitive psychology was introduced. And the traditional approach, uh, there are some reason the traditional approach is criticized by uh, the researcher, and they brought the new idea of psychology, and which is later known to us as cognitive psychology. Now, when cognitive psychology started, in 1956, one of the famous psychologists, one of the famous researchers in that particular field, named Noam Chomsky, uh, fi- gave a paper on his theory of language, and which is considered as one of the first theory, first avenue, first opening of cognitive psychology. And he described how cognition and language development is interrelated. This is the this is the first idea given by the uh, Noam Chomsky in 1956, and in the same year, one of the another psychologist uh, named Miller, 1956, gave a new idea, the magic, the idea on short-term memory. And this short-term memory, this concept is created a first created a curiosity on researchers that how memory has been stored, how memory is generated, and what are the different types of memory. There are number of researches. There are a number of traditional concept was there at that time, but no one is very very no one is very very uh, no one is very very free of criticism. And then the psychologists are tried hard to go to find out the short term memory, long term memory, or what are the other aspects of memory. And Newell and Simon discussed the how problem solving approach has been raised. And these are the primary concept of cognitive psychology, and these are the primary concept of the starting point of the research of the cognitive psychology. Now question is, what is the different important key terms used by the cognitive psychologist when they started the in 1970 researches in 1970s, they first identified the very familiar term that is called bottom up processing, serial processing, and top down processing. These are the three approaches they first identified in 1970s research. And these three was the these these three terminology were the new and novel for that particular time, and no one is very much know to known to them that what are the terminology they use, what are the exact meaning of these three terms. The first is bottom up processing. Psychologist Cognitive psychologist identified that the processing which is directly influenced by environmental stimuli, that is called bottom up processing. And this bottom up processing, every cognition has a different aspect, different idea, different impacted or influenced by the external stimuli. And when this happen, this is turned into a under the process of bottom up processing. On the other hand, parallel processing is when we process two information at a time and simultaneously, and this is called parallel processing. Many of the times we encounter the fact that I am doing this and I am listening to another thing. So this is the simultaneous processing. That means I am observing something or I am doing something, and I am listening simultaneously. I am listening another thing, and that is called serial processing or parallel processing. That means simultaneously I involved in two occasions where I did not able to complete one task, but before completing the one task, I am starting another task. So this is called parallel processing. And the third is top down processing. That means when stimulus is processed, stimulus processing is influenced by the individual's past experience and expectations. Now I have an anticipation, I have a prior experience, what type of problems, what type of stimuli it is. And on the basis of this experience and expectation, I am starting to I have been influenced by the stimuli. So these three are the new concept given by the cognitive psychologist in 1970s. And when they start these three concepts, uh, before their new avenues of researches, there are many of the general psychology approaches available in psychology, but the traditional concept is not free from the criticism. So bottom up processing, serial processing, and top down processing the three concepts they are given in a new way. They are conceptualized the psychology approaches in a very unconventional as well as modern approaches. And uh, parallel processing parallel processing is the processing which needs a complex cognitive structure. That means I am observing, I am involving one sense as well as another sense in a simultaneous manner, in a parallel manner. So I am going going by two different stimuli at a time. And one individual is encounter two stimulus at a time, then the cognitive processing will be complex, because at a time I have been facing I will be faced two stimulus at a time, and I will be reacting towards the stimulus at a time, or I will be attentive attentive to stimuli simultaneously. So parallel processing is something is when parallel processing does not possible when the cognitive structure is very less complex. If the cognitive structure is complex, then only parallel processing will be done. So basically, these three will open a new avenue of cognitive research. And this cognitive research is uh, is given a new outlook of the psychology, next 50 years psychology pattern, and change the psychology pattern. Now, how cognitive psychology why cognitive psychology is very much important, because it is considered that it is assumed, it is anticipated that cognitive psychology is a it needs complex, as well as a very hard, one of the hardest uh, psychology branches, and when where the cognition, human cognition, is related to different subjects. So cognitive psychology, first theoretical assumption was given by the and was given in the Chomsky's viewpoint. And next, that was the first theory of cognitive psychology. And from then, there are a lot of development happened in the cognitive psychology area. And cognitive psychology is very much connected with the cognitive neuropsychology, and which is very much connected with the different parts of the brain. What parts is responsible for what cognition? That is the main area of cognitive researches, and the outcome will be very different. So cognition is when we define cognition is a higher mental process, I have to very clear myself that what are the techniques of studying brain. We are not are we are not giving any kind of a simple analysis, simple recording system of to use cognitive psychology. So there are a lot of area we all know. We all, when we when we visit any doctor, we are prescribed EMRI, MRI, CT scan, etc. And in cognitive psychology also, there are lot of recording techniques of the brain, like like the medical practitioners use. Uh, some of them are single unit recording, event related potentials, PET, positron emission tomography, functional magnetic resonance imaging, that is fMRI, uh, event related functional magnetic resonance imaging, EfMRI. So lots of regulation, lots of recording techniques available, brain recording available for the in the cognitive psychology. But most of the cases, we are very much concentrated on this kind of development, this kind of recording in the psychological aspect. And this psychological aspect is very very important, is very very uh, required for the new avenues, a new concept development in psychology. Now, if I ask that what is the meaning of sensation, what is the meaning of perception, I assume that you all know the meaning of sensation or perception. And cognitive psychology said that these simple traditional approaches should be rectified in the light of cognitive psychology theory. And they started to they started to uh, expand the traditional approaches to the into the modern approaches. And parts vision is considered as visual perception is their first interest area in cognitive psychology. Now vision is the what is the visual uh, expression. And this is the very important area where we are first sense one thing through my eye, the sense organ. And how what is the if I sense one thing through my eyes, how I meaning I how I give the meaning of that particular thing. That is the main area of the visual perception. Most importantly, when we go by the visual perception, the main important thing is that how processing form processing, and how I the form processing. And this is the most important area of the under consideration of researches. But before going into the very deeper level of cognitive psychology, I just gave the five pillars which is considered as the main pillars of the cognitive psychology. And these five pillar the five pillars is biological, cognitive psychology, developmental psychology, social and personality psychology, and mental and physical health. But most importantly, cognitive psychologists are claim that cognitive is covering all the aspects of the rest of the four psychology, that is biological, developmental, social and personality, mental and physical health. I have already mentioned that cognitive psychologist covers perception, thinking, intelligence, memory, language, etc., which is considered as one of the major areas of development, one which is the major which can be the major arises the problem in mental and physical health, and which can be a direct connection with the social and personality. Now now cognitive psychology is very is started with the Chomsky's theory. And later it turns into the uh, developments in computer science, and the how computers is work with, and how artificial intelligence and human cognition has connection. Now in 2021, the research uh, direction in the area of cognitive psychology has totally changed. And this direction is going beyond the human being, and how a very very modern artificial intelligence has to be formed. with the help of human cognition. That is the main idea of the recent researches. Now, cognitive processes, the cognitive psychologists said that uh, mental processes affect the behavior of human being, and this behavior is limited to the three stages of memory. That means three stages are very, very important. But when I encounter in my real life, in any situation, I am not able to demark these three stages. But theoretically, I have to understand these three distinct stages of memory. The first stage is sensory memory storage. That means it is continuously I am exposing stimulus through my sense organ. And sensory memory stage, sensory memory stage is the exposure of stimuli. I am always being exposed different kinds of stimuli through my sense organ. And these sense organs are, we all know, the five sense organs. And the sensory memory storage is a fraction of millisecond. That means second 1000, 1 by 1000 moment of a second, I am holding that sensory memory storage. After the sensory memory storage, that is the second storage is called short-term memory storage. And short-term memory storage, whatever the information is allowed by me after the sensory memory storage, the information is entered into the short-term memory storage, and only a fraction of second. And cognitive psychologists identified that this is very, very minimum storage capacity, and that is called 30 second. And I am temporarily analysis or retrieves in and uh, retrieves information from the third stage. So sensory memory storage is a millisecond, holds for a millisecond. Short-term memory storage is not more than 30 seconds. And now the third and last stage is long-term memory stage. And this information extended period of time, probably the lifelong. Many of the information holds in my memory through my life. So information extended period, information received, and long-term memory only receives, only hold that in memory in the retrieves information from the short-term memory. So sensory memory to short-term memory to long-term memory. Sensory memory is only for millisecond, short-term memory only for max to max 30 seconds, and long-term memory is maximum in a lifelong. Now that is the three stages of memory, and which is called the three stages of memory, and which is started from the every time when I sense something through my sense organ, that is sensory memory storage. Now question is, if I am exposing millions of stimuli at a time, how I am processing that particular information? The cognitive psychologist identified that a very few view are allowed to enter into the second stage of my memory, and most of the sensory memory is lost after a millisecond. Only the few memory which I want to concentrate further, they are allowed to go into the short-term memory storage. And the very few are allowed to go from short-term to long-term memory. And this short-term memory storage is very, very important. And when I am not allowed, when I am not allowed to information for further processing, then short-term memory loss, short-term memory, information does not enter, does not receive any in permission from the short term, from going enter into the short term memory to long term memory. So a very, very tight screening is happened from sensory memory to short term memory and short term memory to long term memory. Then only I can hold some information in for a long time in my memory. That's why my memorization capacity is very much capable to handle daily. So this is the funda of the memory, that how I am not able to memorize all the information I went through, and how if I exposed to every time for a millions of sensory memory, then why I am increase or decrease my memorization capacity, or where I am not face any problem in the memorization capacity. So the sensory memory storage is very, very sensory memory to, from sensory memory to short term memory and short term memory to long term memory, a very, very tight screening happened automatically by my brain or by my attention, by my another cognitive area. So memory is memory, and the next is attention, that is very much linked with the memory. Now every time I exposed in towards the stimuli, I am not able to attain all the stimuli at a time. So I am not paying attention to all the stimuli equally, or I am not wanted to, I don't want to pay attention on all the memories, all the sensory information or stimuli. Now attention is a state which has a focused awareness on a subset of the available perceptual information. And this perception, this attention phenomena is very much limited with my sensory organ also. The human brain simultaneously receive auditory, visual, olfactory, taste, tactile, all the five information I have, five sense organ I have, and the human brain continuously received information, and the brain automatically decide the consciousness and unconsciousness, and a very few information is consciously handled, and a very few information is constantly avoided, or I am not paying attention. So if I am not able to pay, or if I am not giving any type of attention or awareness towards this information, I am not giving, I am not want to allow those information for the further processing. So this is the attention thing. Then many of the cases, my parents, my elders are when I was young, it was instructed when while I am studying that you should read loudly. Why? That this is the two sense organ, that means visual as well as my auditory, and two sensory organ simultaneously active. That's why they are instructed to pay concentration, uh, pay, uh, pay concentration, or they are instructed to read loudly. So this is the funda of their instruction, that we are going to discuss, we are going to use all the sense organ.
So may I ask a question?
Last, acha bolo.
Sir, what is the difference between concentration and attention?
Okay, I am giving it after my lecture. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. Now, attention is divided into two major system, and this is called exogenous and endogenous. Now I discussed it, the bottom up and uh, bottom up processing, signal processing. Now this is happened. How? Exogenous control very much link up with the bottom up manner, and very much and they are very much link up with the environmental stimuli. And endogenous control works the top down processing, and this exogenous and endogenous control are very much covered the human attention. And attention is very very important to know how, in which area I should attain. There are some stimuli which can directly dictate or directly lead me to give attention to that particular subject or object. So there are a lot of variables, uh, there are a lot of variables, there are a lot of factors which can decide when and where I should attain, and when and where I should not attain. So there are factors which are decided, which are the key factors of the attention. So attention is the uh, one of the major concern area of the cognitive psychology, and this area is very much linked up with the memory also. And attention is the another concept, is a relevant concept, is there divided attention. How I divide my attention, and how I how attention can be divided. So there are a lot of debates happened before the introduction of cognitive psychology in 1950s, because there are a lot of traditional approaches, there are a lot of myths related to the human cognition. There are a few of the myths are, uh, cognition cannot be cognition is not very complex in nature, human attention cannot be divided, etc etc. But after the after the new avenues of cognitive psychology, these myths are are being able to explain. And this explanation has a very much a very logical and very very has a appropriate scientific proof also. So So when we want to concentrate on attention, that means there are three things. Definition of attention, that means a state of focused awareness on a subset of the available perceptual information. And attention is linked, how attention is linked with the sensation, how attention is linked with the memory, how attention has two different system, that is exogenous and endogenous. And exogenous is link up with the bottom up manner, and endogenous is link up with the uh, top down manner. And this attention has a another new phenomena, which is discovered only after the introduction of cognitive psychology, that is the concept of divided attention. Now the memory, uh, we all know that there are two types of memory, because many of the cognitive psychologists are not considered sensory memory is a type of under the type of memory, that is the short term memory and long term memory. And short term memory is a very has is considered as working memory. That means it is an instant information I receive, and I am instantly response to the this stimuli. Working memory uh, is a very is a when we want to process temporarily any information, and I am using it working as a working memory. That means this is not at all pertinent to my life, this is not at all relevant to my life. That's why I am not going to decide it I am decide to keep it in a long term basis in my memory. I don't want to. So this is the automatic process is continuing in my memory, and this information, this temporary information is automatically vanished, automatically wiped out from my brain. So after that this working memory is not allowed to store, not retrieved in the long term memory. Now in your practical courses, there are a lot of experiments, which experiments you have to do on working memory. And this working memory is to analysis, to measurement of individuals memorization capacity through the memorization of nonsense level. And there are a lot of interesting finding found by uh, Ebbinghaus, one of the famous memory researcher, that what are the factors, what are the different causes, what are the different characteristics should require for memorization. Now for example, uh, for example, many of the individual who when he or she wants to memorize a portion of his or her paragraph, it can be it is always very evidently proved that first part of the paragraph and the last part of the paragraph he memorized correctly. It is a tendency that I am memorizing the first part of the paragraph and the last part of the paragraph. And many of the exceptional cases, it has been seen that first paragraph and first portion of the paragraph and the last portion of the paragraph is not memorized, but the middle portion of the paragraph is effectively and efficiently memorized by the individual. But this is an exceptional case. So the position is very much important, and how you memorize, that means when you study wholly. That means I am at a time memorize whole paragraph, and I am not at all breaking the paragraphs into small manner. And this is called whole learning. And on the other hand, I am concentrating on part learning when I uh, divide the task in a very small manner, and this is called part learning. And here also it is there are mixed result found by the researchers, that many of the cases it has been seen that whole learning is very much effective for the memorization, and the any of the cases it has been seen that part learning is the very much effective for the individual. So there are a lot of exceptional thing also available for the human being, because human being has an individual differences from individual to individual. Their their cognitive pattern is also different. So cognition is memorization is a very important part. How I memorize, how I want to memorize, how I start to memorize from working memory to turn into the long term memory, that is the another area. The long term memory, where I have already mentioned that long term memory holds the information for a long run, and that means it can be for the lifelong also. Many of the cases, Alzheimer's clients are not able to recognize, are not able to hold their information, memorize their information in short term basis. But very interestingly, they can recall, they can easily they can easily answer the for the long back incidents, long back information, and through its through their from their long term memorization capacity. So this is the very
Excuse me,
very
Professor. I have a question that for the Alzheimer patient, so then for them, is it possible that they can retrieve from the long-term memory? Like short-term is not working for them, so whatever it is stored in the long-term memory, so they can easily retrieve it. Is it the case, or is it a different thing?
No, they it is all on Ekshoma. Many of the cases it has been seen that um, uh, of long childhood memory for the patient, he or she can easily respond to that particular incident when they are narrate the story, and they show their proper emotions towards them, it is not always possible, but many of the cases it has been seen that short term memory is not possible, but long term memory, they are showing their very uh, excitement, and as well as their spontaneous reaction towards that particular incident. It can be seen.
Thank you, sir.
So long term memory is the process, how I allow working memory to the long term memory. This is the process, and this process is the process of memorization. That, and this cannot be happen in a very haphazard manner. It should be a systematic. Now, whenever I studied in my childhood, or uh, in my school life, many of the instruction given by my instructor or teachers or parents, it cannot be justified by them, but it is they are giving the instruction. It has a cognitive evidence that they are giving this kind of thing, this kind of idea, this kind of instruction. It have a justification. That means attention. You have to read loudly. So you are engaging your two sense organ at a time. And if you, when you engaging two sense organ at a time, uh, this is the possibility you are not affected, you are not impacted by any other information during that particular time. So they are instructed to ourselves, to us, that read loudly. Now when they want, when another thing, uh, you should read it repeated time, again and again. That is, that instruction is faced by everyone in their childhood, in their student life. Why? Because in the cognitive psychologist said that if you want to memorize any working memory to long term memory, the first thing, the first important thing is how to you rehearse, how you repeatedly exposed into in that particular information. And this is the evidence, this is the uh, evident, this has an evidence that the type of rehearsal and how rehearsal is taken place is important for the memorization. So when I go for a poem, or when I go for a uh, paragraph, how I repeatedly and how many time I go through that particular study, that particular paragraph, it is very important. So rehearsal is the first idea, first factor which is decided that how your working memory is is turned into a long term memory. Now one of the student is raised their hand. Please give your opinion or give your question, please, here.
Yes, sir.
No, no,
I was asked for
no, no, another person.